So, Adam, how long have you been working with David?
I mean, this is our second go around, probably 3 years now. In the second 2, 3 years.
Okay.
So yeah,
And
he played in Europe. He played over here and then won in Europe, and then playing full time in Europe. We took a little break because I wasn't going over there, and then he's come back. He's playing Corn Ferry over here, 11th on the money list right now. So hopefully moving on to the show. It's a goal.
and tell me sort of speed version of what his game's like. Especially ball striking, but what's he playing with here?
It's if he can keep it in play off the tee, it's hard for him to make a bogey. So it struggles with the driver, doesn't hit it as far as we want to hit it, and struggles to keep the driver between the rough lines, so to speak. So if he doesn't chip out or have a penalty stroke off the tee, he's going to hardly make any bogeys for the week because his short game, his wedge play is pretty high up there.
Okay.
So that's how he kind of survives. And, he's had gains. Like, I think his ball striking's improved significantly since we work, but we're still, we create pretty good bit of speed with the 5-iron and don't translate it to the driver very well, I feel like. And there's obviously a few things I see in action that we're trying to confirm or take another route through you.
So for the most part, I'm going to compare his driver swings. So what I'm going to do is look through his iron swing first, just to make sure it looks like his other stuff. What I typically do is start with the frontal plane torque, which is sort of the power generation from the face-on view.
Okay.
And the horizontal plane torque, which is, if you can see swing it over there. It's the power generation in the horizontal plane or parallel to the ground. Those two combined are what create the overall power for the golf swing.
So, simplest terms, what do you mean? Lateral and vertical?
Well, since it's a rotational thing, this how about this? This hump plus this hump create golf swing. How's that?
All right.
So if it were baseball, it would be a lot of this hump because that's a really horizontal plane thing. Since the golf swing has more up and down, that's where this one comes into play as well.
Yeah. Okay.
So his iron swing, the demands for an iron swing are a little lighter. So things look okay. He's gonna guess he's so combined. He's okay.
What do you mean by that? By the demands for an iron string?
So unless he is really for some reason trying to max out the velocity of his iron.
His chance to come up and out of an iron shot or less is what you're saying, and it's a good player.
So, I mean, to gain more distance with irons, he can usually play a longer club. He doesn't have that option for a driver.
I gotcha.
So the need to maximize iron head speed with control that demand isn't there so much. There isn't really that option for a driver. To be boring, we devalue power a little bit for control with an iron. But it usually, the patterns usually look pretty similar. So it should look like a slightly toned down version of a driver swing.
Okay.
So I usually take a quick glance. Now, the most interesting thing is if an iron swing looks really different than a driver swing, then that usually tells me that we don't see that very often in good players.
Mm-hmm.
And that usually says that we've got somebody who is two things: is searching for power and not finding it, and more importantly, doesn't know how to find power. So that's usually a different strategy
Okay.
for instruction. So since we have both, I'm going to stop messing around with his iron stuff. So okay, so this is his before. This is his before or earlier in that day driver swing on the left.
Mm-hmm.
This is his later one that I think you called hips down. So just to play it through on the video, so the one on it should look like the right. Does that to you look like what you were working on later in that day?
Yeah.
Okay. So,
I mean, maybe play the other one, but yeah,
yeah, sure.
Like it.
That's later in the day.
Yeah, there's no doubt that's it.
Okay, good. So even without looking at any graphs, you're before looking at any of the graphs, you're going the right direction. That before swing is I don't know if Chris sent you or let you know what I mentioned. It's not good.
No, he didn't let us know anything, so I didn't.
Okay. Yeah. So it's.
I didn't see anything, Mike. I just the text. I wasn't even sure what you meant exactly.
So yeah.
I haven't seen this data yet.
So going through the quickest and easiest thing that we look for in the two fundamental graphs are the shape of these two and the relative height of the peak. And I'm going to start at the horizontal one. So this positive hump here it's relatively smooth. There's a ramp up and then a relatively smooth peak and a drop off, and that's good. That's the shape we want. We'll get to the height of it in a little bit. If you look at this one, it's a steeper peak, then it drops off, and there's a second peak, and that's fundamentally that's not good. Whenever we see in the power development phase, when we see a drop and a pickup, a noticeable hiccup or notch like that, that's a truly lost opportunity. We can't get this back, and to be honest, it's not good for power development. And what it typically means is that somebody is trying to do two things when there's only time to do one. And so that's either just going to result in a loss in power, or it's also going to result in a loss of control, because there's not really time to do two things in about a 1/16 of a second.
So right now, the swing on the left, these are two different swings, obviously.
Yes.
They're both drivers, right?
Yes.
The one on the right, without the gear stuff on, are you saying that's the better swing or the not as good swing? Just so I'm kind of, huh?
The one on the right is, so right now we're looking at the old swing.
Okay. And we're looking at basically the total torque from the transverse plane. From a transverse plane, that's the bottom graph, and then the face-on plane is the top graph.
Yeah.
Okay.
I use the phrase horizontal because it's horizontal to the ground or parallel to the ground.
I understand. I'm just trying to use language that maybe they can connect with. Like if someone were to look from the top down, it's the torque they're creating, and if someone were looking face-on, that'd be frontal plane.
Right, and they're both driving rotation, obviously.
One's driving rotation this way, and one's driving actually this way rotation. So Okay, so if we got the face on one, and that's where you're saying that that little kind of dip is not ideal.
Yeah, this double hump right here, the double peak, that is at best it's a loss of power.
Can we see where it drops down a little bit? Can you play it so we can?
Yeah, you want to. So, and I'm gonna for this. I'll do this a little bit and so looking at timing of the swing.
Yeah, I just want to see positioning where this is all happening. So, okay. So he's peaking in the frontal plane torque right about there, and then it drops down.
Yeah.
And then it kind of spikes back up.
Yeah.
Okay.
And realistically, he should actually right now, for most players, it actually should peak. This may explode. Nope, there we go. It should actually peak right about here. And you'll notice his horizontal plane, the one down here, it does. He's right about the top. Now I don't care if it's a frame or two above.
So now should they both peak right there? You're saying both graphs should peak right there?
This one around there is great. So this is, I mean, down here he's 2 frames ahead. I don't care. That's great timing.
Okay, so but just in general, does one peak before the other?
A couple frames either way doesn't matter.
Okay.
Peaking back here, and Chris, I'm going to jump ahead. So he used his moment arm. He's not using his force, since
okay.
That's 10 minutes later in discussion. But yeah. So that.
Okay, so to me this is so. I'm just gonna kind of piece it together for Adam the way I sort of interpret this. I feel like this is very much because the frontal plane torque is all about. It's basically that motion, right? This motion, and then what happens is instead of you going this way a ton, the club goes because this is momentum this way. It gets transferred to the club, and that's where you get because you're getting with the club you're getting some speed in the horizontal plane, some in the vertical. That's like say 45 degrees, right? That's the angle that's traveling on. So some of the speeds some of the momentum's coming from this gets transferred to the club. Some of the momentum's from this gets transferred to the club. So to me, this to this is the first peak because he has to get back there, and then he's kind of like transferring it, trying to get to the club.
But that's why the timing between the 2 peaks is so far off.
Probably, yeah, and that's probably why
that's the recovery from.
Yeah, and that's also why exactly it's basically why the frontal plane happens so early.
I mean, we'll be able to see kind of on the graph of the second swing.
At the top, he gets a lot this way, and then he recovers that way. So we're thinking that frontal plane peak early is that early, and then it kind of recovers, and then it starts to go. I was telling him the first part I was saying is that like. You're creating momentum in 2 different directions. Like we could break it in 2 different directions: horizontal, vertical, and you're trying to get that momentum in the club head, which is swinging on both those planes at a 45. We'll say sort of splitting the 2 for numbers. And the frontal plane torque, that peak early, is because he's got this backswing and he's recovering that way early in transition.
And it also, to me, makes sense because it shows you why the 2 peak out of time with each other so far apart. You know what I mean? Because his lower is arguably helping him recover at that point.
Yeah, that is where I want to go.
Yeah, that's where we want to go to, man. 100%.
So say again. So clarify that.
That early swing in simple versions, that first swing's not really using his legs.
Well, he uses them to recover from
that. Yes.
Peaks his power at the wrong time and he's spent.
I'm not saying that it's just this. I'm saying the legs are creating that motion.
In simplest terms.
Yeah. So do you guys still have my screen up on your?
Yeah.
Yes, we can see both. That way you can see us, and we can see you and the screen.
So that first peak is that nice recover. Position and slide, and then that later is okay. Now I can use my legs and start creating that left side vertical. It's just that and we're going to see. In fact, I'll kind of jump the ship. You can see that that second peak is now as big. In fact, now it's bigger, which is great because that left leg is now involved at a better time. And Chris, I'll tell you this: that left leg has more of a moment arm it can use. So now it's letting him use his left leg. I think a little bit better. I think the force is a little bit better, but he's able to use it at a better time. So now the timing, the timing of the upper body movement, the lower body power generation is matching up.
And that gap's probably lessened with the iron swing too, I would think, because he's not trying to peak power, potentially overturn the back much, have this bigger recovery, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Does that make sense?
It very well could. It very well could. I don't have both of those, so I won't say yes or no, but
I mean,
very likely. I mean, going back to his iron pattern looks like this, just actually without the dip in between. So
yeah, there's less of a recovery if that's what's causing the dip.
Yep.
So are those the graphs for the second swing we're looking at now?
I'm going to bounce between the two. So right now I'm on the second swing.
So it still has the blip in transition, the second one.
Yeah, but let me. Yes, that is true.
Yeah, it wasn't as noticeable to us on TV,
it's
whatever. You know what I'm saying? So
this is. I mean, there is. So yes, there's still a blip. This is so much better.
yeah, moment arms more forward or more with the
yeah, and
we can better, simplest terms, right? It peaks. Yeah. He peaks far less early than he does on the other one.
So we went for, well, I shouldn't say we. I didn't do it. Yeah. So this earlier swing went from a peak of 16 to trying to squeeze out a second peak at 12 something. All right. So and so that was. And that's I'll give him credit. It's tough to do that. It's in math. I'll be boring. It's x times y, and he really didn't have the y anymore. So good job getting to 12. The second swing, remember he got back to 12. Now he's up at 20. I mean, it's a second peak, but it's actually bigger than the first. So. I don't, that's sure it's a double peak, but it's a small hiccup, and it's up probably where that value should be. So this is a much better pattern, and you've put him in a position where, and we know that things are going the right direction for two reasons. I'm going back to his old swing. His peak left side vertical, that's the left side force that you want. It happened here at just past arm parallel, which is, it's a little early. And he's at 136% body weight. In his later swing, now it's noticeably past arm parallel, which is better. And it's at 152%. So the timing's better.
Want that ideally? Like, where is ideal?
Right about here. In fact, in reality, very near, somewhere between club vertical and arm at 45. So I would not. Right there, great. If it's a frame before, frame after, I wouldn't move it.
Okay.
Because really what we're doing, what that's saying is you allowed him to apply that force longer. So he was creating rotational velocity longer. In what, if you, can you see both swings? So what you did is you allowed him to apply that force for about 7% longer in the swing. And it doesn't sound like much, but that's when the force is the most. So you're putting that much more into the swing.
That's room for error at the end of the day, is it not?
Yeah. So that's, so you've got a bigger force going in for a longer time, and that's great.
Okay. Where do we go from here? How do we get it better? What's your opinion on that? Like, more, yeah? If I take the blip out, I guess it's number one. And how concerned should I be about it?
So this was this all yesterday? Is that right?
It wasn't even a ton of work. It was just,
yeah.
In all honesty, and it was mostly Brian.
So what in my eyeball view, you put him in a position where he could use his legs better, and his upper body and lower body are now timed and working together better. So that's great. I'm not a golf instructor, so I want to stay pretty far away from that side of things. I'd be interested to see, with a few more days of this, does that frontal plane, that sort of yellow graph, does that smooth out on its own? On its own, or does it stay like that? I haven't yet. I don't know if you felt like this was the shallow, medium, or deep dive. This was sort of the shallow plus for me. I haven't gotten to look through all the combinations yet. I would take a look at all the other pieces to take a look at maybe in a week or so, what the next piece that I talk to you about, maybe this is what gets added in next. The other part that I would, if I'm going to start adding in pieces, what's his path and delivery typically like for a driver?
Yeah, fights too much in to out, too much up on the ball with the club.
Okay.
And so we gotta, both of those are anti-fade.
Okay. And after this, was there any noticeable change on that yet, or is that still?
It started shifting in the right direction. Absolutely.
Okay. Yeah. So for me, I would, you changed the middle and probably made the biggest core change. So I'd like to see how that settles out. And then once that kind of reaches an equilibrium just on his own kind of internal adjustments, then I'd be happy to take a look at maybe one or two more things that are I would accept a little smaller, but especially the horizontal forces, and those tend to change some of the delivery type things.
When we look at the first parts of those graphs, right, that are both on the other sides of the lines, do those look all somewhat okay? And I'm assuming those are loading patterns.
Oh yeah. So are we talking sort of down here below the line?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's backswing pattern.
Is that where down the road is something that could kind
of? No. So really, what I'm looking at are, and apologies for doing this to you. So the next, I'm gonna start. We've spent most of the time in this face-on view frontal plane torque that Chris was talking about. The next part that I'd really get into is how he creates the horizontal plane torque, and that's really what creates the the pelvis and shoulder turn. And as you can imagine, that's really going to influence. It can really influence club delivery. So that's how much we're pushing right hip forward and left hip back. Those create that kind of rotation. So they're great for creating rotational speed, but they can also play around with club delivery a little. So that's the next place that I would look. But anytime you make the kind of change that you already did, these will change some. So that's why I'd like to let the first change sink in a little bit, see what's already happened here, and then take a look at how these are still doing. And on ballpark, would you say slow, medium, fast hips?
Probably not fast.
Medium, I'd say.
Probably medium.
Yeah.
Between also pretty easy, but
I mean, he's got K-vest on it.
yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah, his ground force pattern suggests not fast hips, which is probably going to set him up for an in-out pattern. But also his previous pelvis position and delivery is going to set him up for an in-out pattern too. So
What?
So it'll be
Too tucked under on pelvis, so to speak.
and I apologize. I'm a really strangely literal person that doesn't speak golf. So when you say tucked under, which way is tucked under for you? So not necessarily, but he stays. It looks like he stays pelvis closed for a while. And then doesn't have a real fast pelvis opening. So that's gonna help him stay, deliver the club from inside to out.
Yeah, I mean, it fights kind of that pattern through the ball.
Yeah. Yep.
So we're like the little bit of a change we made yesterday was more Brian trying to help him get that way through the ball. Deepen this, sink back into it.
Okay. Did you guys look at his transition sequence just on KVAS?
Yeah, I don't think they have. I haven't looked at any of it.
I have. I mean, we didn't look at it in detail yesterday.
We can pull it up though.
Okay.
Yeah.
So those are especially when looking at the horizontal plane forces. Those are some things to have. I don't like. I really don't like making suggestions without a golf instructor.
Yeah, I mean, I think everything you're saying is he's been recovering from kind of extension, and nothing's moving fast from there until he kind of gets back, and then he tries to get it, but he's lost a lot of it by then.
Yeah.
I mean, that's my layman's terms of everything. If I want to oversimplify everything you just told me, that's what I'm doing.
Yeah. And so I think that yesterday's old to newer swing, I think you've given him the opportunity to do a lot more from the first 5% of downswing through impact, which is great. I think that window is now a much bigger window for how he gets to deliver the ball.
Right, and if that blip that we see smooths out, those other numbers that you're seeing should progress in the right direction, correct?
Yeah, he went from.
No.
I'm not even worried about that. He went from having a peak and a drop off at a terrible time to having a little double hump, but that second hump is good.
Faster and more in time.
So that's gone from the primary problem to a secondary issue that may continue to smooth itself out as he gets more used to that delivery pattern.
So, like, in pure layman's terms, right? We're trying to create down into that front axis, right? And we feel like he tried to get the rise out of the upstairs, right? Instead of like redoing it and getting the rise out of downstairs, and almost feeling like the upstairs stays more compressed to keep that out of it, and then be able to get the sink that way, or the down pressure that way, and have big block, as I call it, stay more on top of little block, and then work in a more coordinated fashion. You know what I'm saying? Because right now we fight a lot of that, the longer the club gets.
Okay.
You know what I mean? And certainly that doesn't help our path go any more left either, right? We fight a lot of in to out because of that as well. So.
Nothing's happening necessarily here.
Yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, that's what's interesting. So like all this ground reaction force stuff, it's basically saying we're creating momentum and trying to transfer it to the club. But you can create all that momentum and never transfer it to the club.
Right.
You're creating the potential. Doesn't mean you're going to do it.
Right.
For some
What
people,
we feel, that's what he feels like he does when he focuses lower half.
yeah, it just gets caught. It gets stuck in the body, sort of. So this is where sometimes when people focus more, it's almost like you're priming your brain, saying, okay, this is what I got to do to the ground. Fine, put it on a shelf. If I do that, I'm going to need to do this to the club to even tap into that. So I'm going to focus on what I need to do to the club, and then that elicits the reaction to get that to happen. So that's where it's like working the problem almost backward in a way. But
Because at the end of the day, you need to create the speed here that's going to transfer out to
yeah,
your arms, which is going to create
right.
the speed in the club.
And that's where some people like do like pullbacks or whatever. They're just getting stuff to the club, and all of a sudden this gets better because it's sort of like, oh, I know what the end game is. I need to happen. What can I do before that to make that happen even like more? That's subconscious, really.
Yeah.
You know,
And everyone's different in their fields too, you know.
100%. Or what part of their body they can focus on. Right. Some people are really connected to their hands. Some people are connected to their feet. Like,
Well, I know Tiger, for instance, always, he says anyways,
he
he
is.
just thinks about his hands.
Which, I mean, he does. And the thing is, like, if you look at him as a little kid, he had super fast hips, right?
Right.
But he was still, that was just kind of.
He just kind of had that Charlie look where he's,
Mhm.
I've had that, I always the same way. Like,
Yeah.
I'm fully released lower before I even get to impact.
Yeah.
As a kid when we were trying to send it.
That's right. Yeah, right. Yeah.
With David, did you get to look at what you needed? Transition sequence?
Yeah, it actually looks pretty good. So
It depends. I mean, are you looking at the driver or the iron in transition too?
I looked at that was the driver. So
All right, so that would.
So I don't want to jump in on that. I want to let him.
Okay.
I want to let him play with this for now and
Because it has gotten out of time when that gets excessive.
yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? Well, as you can imagine, I think that's what you were looking at. But I mean, I don't know. I'm reading your mind in a way. Right? So the sequence will get off, like it'll get almost upside down in a way. You know, like definitely shoulders before lower when it gets too far that way. If that's what you were looking for in the transition sequence, and then late activation of lower.
Yeah, I was looking for a couple things. I think, overall, my big concern was the relationship between his hips and upper body and what his knees couldn't do because of where they were. And there's been a big improvement on that so far that's got him going in a really good direction. So if you want to let him swing for a week, and then I'd be happy to take another look and go through with a more fine-tooth comb to see how that's settled in and what some other things are. It'd be kind of fun.
So how would you pull that off? I'm curious. If you work with coaches all the time, I'm sure you've seen a swing that got worse. Or not?
The philosophic approach is the same. The specifics are different. So I would ask a lot more questions about what had happened and why, and then I would pretty carefully talk about why and how those goals were not being achieved.
Like,
Well, you see, like, I think you see a lot of the guys, like Rory or whatever, you know, like, yeah, it's like like that's essentially like,
Matt Wolf.
There's that
Yeah.
like right shift. Yeah. They almost shift right.
well, they're pushed,
And
but
then
there would be a spike here to initiate it, though, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Push off that.
Because you have to,
Yeah, to push. But
and then it would probably, what he's saying, lighten to a certain extent, and then it would increase as it goes down, and then recatches down.
Right. There's a light and like at the top of backswing transition, wherever that's like sort of like an arbitrary designation.
Like I would say, like a guy like Anthony who was pretty tight. Everything was really tight.
I'm here.
Like this.
Oh, hey, Mike.
You gotta turn on your video, I wanna see this.
Okay,
I'll,
and this to me is that this can go to the left foot. If this is pushing, that might help feel like it doesn't collapse, right? If you feel like there's like almost like this whole thing is getting pushed back by the left side, that might help make you feel that. Because like, but if you're pushing out your left foot, you're extending your hip and your knee, which is kind of what you want.
I'm afraid of it going like that.
Yeah, but that's where it'd be like, okay, you're pushing, but this is all the stuff we talked about, the thoracic spine, right? Not over rotating this. It's like you're trying to push the middle around with the sternum not going over.
So it's like these are working as two separate units.
I would say,
It's just working in a smaller space. You're changing direction way sooner, right?
this to here is like one unit, and this is resisting as you go back. So go back, so push, and then down. It's kind of more or less how I see it.
I mean, how many times have you and I done that?
But I'm just trying to
Right?
understand how to take the club back, because this is like a lot of thought without like taking the club back. You know what I mean? Like, how do I move the club without like moving through here? Because that's where I love to feel movement in my golf swing. Because like I'm definitely more of like a handsy player. You know, I love to feel, you know, everything through my hands and arms and what they're doing. I play my best when I'm able to feel that and get a good feel for what my arms need to do, or you know, or my upper body needs to do to hit the golf shot. But you know, at times, because if my lower's not working well, then no matter what I do through here,
Yeah, so come here. Put this on your right hip.
It's like you're in the room with us, Mike.
yeah, I'm feeling that.
What? Are you feeling it or not?
Yeah, it's like tight through here.
Yeah. And that's all we're saying. Right? And it's like, go ahead, do that again. Push that stretch, grab my hands. No, go ahead, do that first. You can grab me. Okay, not change. And that's what you're trying. That's when you're trying to feel that stretch more. You know, it's supposed to get so stretched there that you can't create any transition. That like Mike's concern was that will be leading the downswing, I think. And that's part of what he wanted to look at the transition sequence for.
Take concern.
Right? So.
But that's
yeah.
what that's why.
Like to me, you could sit there, like you could have a band over here and you could just go like you are here and go grab the band.
But that's why, like, you know, the drill that we do, where like I take to the top and then you hold the butt of the club.
Absolutely.
That's where
Same idea.
every time I do that, I feel like I hit it pure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're getting answers to some of the things that have worked and really simplification to why they've worked and narrowing in the gap and so we don't have to freaking fish as much, I feel like.
Yeah.
You know? And that's all we're trying to
It's really
do.
about
It's
using
not like
this
we're completed.
data to get validation for what
So-
you're doing, so you're not wasting your time.
So-
It's not like we've been completed yet, but we certainly haven't been as efficient as we could be.
So through the backswing, the most important thing is maintaining this essentially. If I were to simplify, like this is caused by loss
you
of
played
this.
your best golf when the trainer made you aware that your lower abs were shutting down.
But also, like when I was working with my trainer, he wanted this tuck, and I was trying to get like that.
Yeah, that's part I don't agree with.
Yeah.
You know,
Okay.
especially in that.
Yeah.
Now,
So
like his best background's baseball more, he's gonna teach that. That's just kind of how the world's
So there needs to be, there will be pelvic tilt. This won't just go this way.
Absolutely pelvic tilt.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. And there has to, like, and for sure feeling like that angle unfolds into more angle for
Because
people.
I feel like what I've done is, I've tried to work, and we were trying to work on a more level belt buckle going back, or belt line, and I've gone like this, which I'm like, how do I hit from here? So I need to find some power from
There.
here in order to, because like for me, this is like it doesn't feel like I can create any speed from here.
Right. Which you're probably pretty accurate.
Which is probably why I'm like here to there, because I'm trying to, keep that level. But in reality, I need to feel like this is turning more at an angle. And
Do you want to show him what he's doing?
Yeah. Can you see this, Mike? Come on your face. Yes. See. I mean.
so essentially, according to the graphs, and working with Adam, I need to create more, it feels like pelvic tilt and pressure in my right foot. So then in transition and on the downswing, I can recreate or create more pressure in my left foot to create the more vertical force. Is that about right?
Can you kind of show me your older top and transition and what you feel
Yeah,
like you're
so-
doing now?
Yeah.
Really
So.
clever now, doesn't matter.
Okay, so like essentially what would happen is I would go through here, and then as I completed my backswing,
And that's
I
how
would
it collapsed,
I would
too.
move that way,
So that would collapse when he went into tilt.
and then
Like the
I
left
feel
side
like
would
that's
drop.
why there's that spike in the graph, because I have to refind it really fast, otherwise I won't be able to hit the ball, and then turn, and that's where like maybe the second spike would go.
What, somebody reached in there and grabbed your leg.
Yeah.
Without him doing that, I want to see what your.
Yeah. So we're basically trying to.
No coaching this time.
Oh, my bad.
Quick coaching, coach.
So essentially what I was saying is like this leg collapses, I extend my upper back and spine,
Okay.
and to find it, to like get back into posture, I sort of like lean and then try to like tilt back in order to recreate, if I stayed here the entire time, I would smother the ball. So
Okay.
I'm trying to refine it by tilting back, and because I'm swinging so fast, especially with the driver, that when I try to move back in order to create like a launch or an angle of attack, positive angle attack, then I tilt back and then try to create speed through there, and that's where I think maybe that spike, or in like where the second spike is a lot slower, there's less force or whatever that's Gatsby's is measuring, that's where that comes from.
Yeah.
Instead of it
All right,
being,
show me a little bit of what you're trying for now.
so what I'm trying for now is to create less extension in my spine in the backswing, and so then create force into my left foot,
Yeah.
use my legs more and transition the downswing, and that should create a smoother chart, like you were saying, or a smoother graph, because the pressure would be constantly increasing, and then I could then explode up from there.
Okay.
So.
So, real question for you. In your older swing, actually, we'll play How Well Do You Know You? How much were you really pulling or bringing that left knee across? So, no coaching allowed. How much was that left knee moving at late backswing and top?
It was moving, it was collapsing towards the end of my backswing,
Okay.
but not much. It was more like it was good, and then at the very end, it would go a little bit like that.
Show me how much you feel like it was moving.
I mean, with driver, I mean, it was probably like that, so it's like very subtle, but it's just a little bit of movement through there that would cause the imbalance in my back and in my upper body.
Okay.
Because
the reason I wanted to ask, so that when Coach got in there, it was exaggerated. So what, from a biomechanics perspective, you were putting your left knee in a position where you just couldn't use it.
where I what?
Couldn't use it.
So, and even just in the version you showed there, your newer version, you're adjusting to your adjustment now is fine. It doesn't have to be in a position where you can use it the whole time with backswing, because that's not the purpose of backswing, but you're getting it early enough to a position where you can use it. So, essentially you're right. It was out of position so long that you couldn't use that. You couldn't use your left leg for power. You could only use it for kind of a balance save at the end.
Yeah.
That was all you could do with that leg.
Well, what is like ideal to use it for power then?
So there's a little echo. So
What is like ideal positioning then to use it for power?
The knee's pretty tough. There are a lot of options for it. It can turn in. It can stay pretty straight. It just has to be within a range. As you're getting into early downswing, and Chris can actually kind of demonstrate in the room, which is a lot easier than having me do it sort of through the phone. But as long as it's no longer really turned in and lifted, as your hip is going over that knee, then you want that knee to be relatively in line between your hip and your foot. Does that make sense?
So knee, ankle, hip, correct?
But this combination might be what's important is his knee has to be in position before his hands start to go. That's in ground force stuff. That's going to be the real key for him. It might seem weird, but his pelvis rotation, given his timing, his pelvis actually could start to turn a little, but if his hands start to turn and start bring that down, then he's going to be too late for, and he's going to be back to that save rather than drive with that lead leg. Now that's timing. Chris, you guys are going to need force plates for that. But that's really what's going to need to happen.
Right? Even early here, it wouldn't matter as long as it's repositioned.
Yeah, that's like Bubba Watson.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. You should have
And 8K is like the other end where it's like,
External.
keep it there. It's already in position. Now we can just go and
But it's
Yeah.
still the
You
same
gotta
thing.
see
I mean,
your
as much as he's there, he's not waiting for his hands to get there and then go. He still had,
Yeah.
When you're showing me those arrows, like my green arrow from my left, it's my left foot basically, that's pushing back. It's mostly pushing vertical, but so the force would be me pushing that way to push it this way. Is that right? Or no? Or am I not understanding that right?
Yeah, so
So I would feel a push that way, which would drive
Yeah.
that rotation.
yeah, if you were in the sand or your foot slipped, your shoe would slip forward. Yes. Yeah. So the effect of that force is that it pushes your hip back. All right, so The blue arrow that's bigger right now is his trail foot. So in fact, he is truly right side loaded or trail side loaded. So he's in the backswing. So he's loaded up a lot right now. So right side loaded. Now he's transitioning, and you can see already he's in his transition. He doesn't have much on his left side, but he is already pushing as much to get his left hip to start opening. In fact, he might be pushing more front to back than he is side or up and down. And then you can see that. I mean, that's a nice wide V.
So that's basically my club at the top, and now
So that's
now it's starting to work down.
yeah. So he's still there. And he keeps that V. I'm going to reset the view now a little bit. I mean, he keeps his V till almost there. So there he's straight up and down. Now he's an exaggerated example, and you don't need to do that. But so Adam, going back to your question, you definitely want to transition from right side load to left side load somewhere in late backswing to very early downswing. I mean, so yeah, we want to have less force on the right than the left.
And that's too long to transition, in essence.
What's that?
Is he waiting too long to make his transition?
Let me.
And the good example you showed us, is that a left to right player, or is it arguably a drawer? Like, that seemed like a lot of pelvis lead, more of a draw pattern to me.
He does play a draw a fair amount of the time. He's a little dude, hits the ball a ton.
Okay.
So and he's you guys utilize a different fundamental pattern. There's a guy that's been neither is right or wrong. Right. You stay right side loaded longer than that player does. But I mean, I've seen both. I've seen 3D on both that are putting out 120 mile an hour club head speed.
Okay, but arguably, if a guy's like a more of a, say, a gatherer and less of a fast twitch kind of guy, you'd probably err in the other guy's pattern more than in a let's go kind of from the top pattern.
Actually, no. I would let him right side load a little bit longer.
Really?
The other pattern requires a faster transition.
Yeah,
now,
he's a fast twitch guy, so it's arguably that he should have more two directions at once in an earlier transition to peak his pop.
What that means is that probably both are options for you. Are you a springy vertical kind of guy?
Pretty good.
By golf standards, probably, but
yeah,
honestly,
golfers, yeah. He's an athletic golfer. I would throw him in the upper echelon of athletic golfers, and I've been around a lot of golfers. So he's more of an athlete than your typical professional golfer.
So if we were going to have you, you've got three options for jumping. So
I'm typically jump off my left foot that way.
both of these are 2-footed jumps. So one is you can squat down, hang out there, and when somebody says, "All right, now it's time to jump," you jump as high as you always do. The second is you can squat down and jump up like kind of everyone does. And the third is when somebody like lets you drop down and spring up immediately, that's where you live and you look like a freaking kangaroo. Which one do you want to do?
What's the difference between 2 and 3?
2 and 3 is your best when you can like drop down and spring right back up.
Yeah, that's what I would do. I would definitely do it in a fast.
I mean, drop down. I mean, literally drop down off of something. Like you can go boing, 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 boing across the room.
Yeah,
I would say,
Not just a normal squat down, jump up, but hop off something and go boing, boing, boing.
I wouldn't hop off something. I don't think.
really, I would. Just knowing science, I would. I'm supposed to jump higher knowing that, right? Like,
Yeah.
Yeah, you're supposed
I'm
to.
creating
Because
more
what you're
force
gonna
into
put
your
yourself.
deck.
You're gonna put yourself in a position to
But that's the only reason I would
absorb-
answer that way.
absorb. Right.
When in my old days of teaching fitness classes, we do bleacher jumps. And for me, it was jump, land, jump, land. But there were some guys that there was no separation. It was as they were landing, they were already starting the next jump. I never understood it, but they were so springy. Those were the true stretch, fast twitch kind of people. So Cole, this kid, he could hit the ball, do a standing backflip, and start walking down the fairway before the ball landed. So are you slow? Are you normal? Or are you one of those real springy guys?
I'd say I'm more normal.
Okay. That's fine. So either of these are probably decent. So the more quick springy you are, all that just says is that you've got more options. It doesn't mean you have to use them. Folks that aren't able to really change quickly, that last pattern that I just showed you, that late drop and spring has to be timed really well. So player, okay.
Yeah.
All right. So trying to make European tour, was doing pretty well on the way. So he's a right side load, does what you do. Now the scale on these forces is a little bit, I like him a little taller. I think it's a little easier to see, but he'll look like you. He uses that nice tilt for a while, gets that really good separation between force and center of mass to create that good torque, and then shifts over, and as he increases the force, less moment arm. So really similar pattern to yours.
Right. So you're saying if that arrow is going to be close to the blue, it needs to be a big arrow.
No, I'm saying that view, you guys both do a really nice job in that view. What I'm going to try to do now is compare what he does. Yeah. So this is the boring part. So his left side push. What he does differently is he's pushing with almost 40% of his body weight with his left foot. Whereas for you, you're peaking at about 29%. So you guys both do a nice job of pushing up and down. So you do a nice job of steering that force. You do a nice job of pushing up and down. He's just getting more out of it front and back. So he's creating more of a horizontal torque. This is, I hate to do this. This is definitely a deeper level conversation. And I'm going to need to go be a dad in about 10 minutes.
Yeah.
I am happy to continue this conversation in the next, well, maybe tomorrow, unless you guys are free Christmas morning. Maybe not.
Like, why don't we try some things and we'll capture some stuff on gas and we'll send you some new stuff.
Yeah. I mean, Chris knows these. There are some cues. There are some things that this one's a little harder to do from a distance without kind of talk and show you through it. So I apologize. I don't love doing it this way.
Can I take a guess at it just a little bit, Mike?
What's that?
Can I take a guess at it a little bit?
Yeah.
Just as he gets back and then he gets the arms down, you want him to get even a little bit more over there as the arms are coming down and get these a little lower? And be able to drive more that direction?
So what I wouldn't cue it through the hands necessarily. What I want him, the cue that I usually give to the coach is that as he's transitioning over there, Sam, is it Sam? I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I'm terrible with names. Can you hop right in the camera view, and I'll be the target. I want to see your lead foot and your lead cheek. I'm your target. So can you move away from me another 4 or 6 feet? Yeah. I don't care what the club is. I want to see your top of backswing and kind of transition to arms parallel.
So you want all one motion?
Yeah, it can be slow. I want to see a position for this. Okay.
You want like more there.
That's. Do you mind people touching your ass in a non-romantic way? All right. Do we have a volunteer for someone to touch his left cheek?
That sounds like his coach's job. What do you need, Mike?
Okay, so go ahead to. That's a lot of. That's a lot. From top of backswing.
Yep.
And if you can go closed fist, it'll probably be helpful for everyone involved. Just put one hand on his left cheek.
On his left cheek. Okay.
Yes. And as he's coming down, try to push his left cheek from on my screen, from right to left on my screen. So toward the ball.
Toward the ball. Okay.
Toward where the ball would be. So go ahead. Yep. So that he has to push back. That's now, yeah, you guys can play reindeer games later, but that's it. So he has to push his left cheek away from the ball in that phase of transition.
Yeah.
That's the most basic idea with it.
Yeah.
We can play around with cueing it from the right hip earlier. We can play around with cueing the left side later, but that's the most basic idea.
So we have these little straps
off of like a diving belt, right?
Yeah.
Here. So for him to like throw balls off of this, make swings off of this, you like that?
Yes, I love that. Yeah, if you want to put one on his left belt loop over there.
Yeah, like we have a diving belt that we use that hooks up right here. So that's where we've been going. We've been on the right track then, it sounds like.
Yeah, I use a similar type thing for some well, it sounds weird if I say for some other stuff, but yeah, that's the right idea. I don't know how to get out of this phone call with any dignity, but
That's all I can think about right now.
not sure I started the phone call with much dignity, so great.
So we would want to see, if we're looking at left toe heel force, we want to see an increase in that, whatever, upwards of like 40% would be just whatever, generic.
I'd set a target of 35 for now.
35, okay, great.
Yep.
So we can do some stuff on here.
Yeah, it should, and then tell them to go earmuffs.
Okay, earmuffs.
Yeah. So I expect his right was at like 17. That should on its own, without him even thinking about it, that should climb up to like 22, 25.
And that's in the negative. That's
Yes, exactly. Yes.
Right side. Yeah. Okay.
Just on the same.
Yeah.
But don't tell him he's a good enough athlete. His right leg should figure that on his own.
Right. You're going to take 5 from the right and give it 5 to the left.
So
Yeah, about that.
Yeah. Okay. That's just more like this.
Only cue one of them for now.
So
Yep.
up there, off of this, behind him, right, to create that, same belt, same band.
I would pull it straight back. I wouldn't lift it up.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. Just trying to create horizontal then. I'm trying
Yes.
horizontal plane to create horizontal.
Horizontal's fine, or horizontal and actually down is fine. You don't need to anchor it high.
Really?
Yep.
It's counterintuitive to me, but
I know, I'm totally with you.
okay.
I've done that,
Okay.
and then I realized what I did, and I undid it.
Yeah, I'm gonna try. All right.
Yeah.
I like it.
So.
Well, thank you very much.
Mike, thank
So-
you.
We're gonna make some sick changes and be back with you. You're not gonna hate us so much.
So, and his dancing might improve. So, all right. Hey, it was a lot of fun to chat with you guys. It's always tough from a distance, but I hope you guys have some fun.
We'll do.
Appreciate it.
Mike, I'll send you a couple post swings today.
Yeah, that'd be great.
And then-
Hey, would you say unstable under the left foot is anything you would try and do to create more?
Not yet.
Okay. I'm going to. Go ahead.
But that's the thing. You guys know each other so much better than I do that,
Typically in his training, we would go, and that's how I change his train. I don't want him thinking as much, so we would throw balls, swing stuff fast, use bands, whatever, forces to try and force the efficiency.
Yeah.
So I would typically have gone without this phone call. I would go one on the ground, next one off the ground, try and give him back the ground, hopefully grow his feet.
Yeah. I mean, if you could ignore everything I said and get rid of the bands and take like a mushy something or a half tennis ball and say, oh, you need to mush that.
Right.
And that might be what gets them to kind of push down and forward.
Right.
And, that might do it. So, how you guys work together and create this, I mean, that's, you guys make the magic. I can give you some suggestions, but it's you guys that do it.
Appreciate it.
So,
Thank you.
all right. Have a good night, guys.